£2,632,000 in used banknotes were stolen, worth about £33 million today. In just 40 minutes, the Great Train robbers became both immensely rich and the most wanted men in the world. Even 38 years later, the crime has not been forgiven.
Mr. Biggs, I want you to listen to what I'm going to say. I have here in my possession a warrant for your arrest for being unlawfully at large from Her Majesty's Prison, Wandsworth.
In this film, 4 of the robbers and their wives talk frankly about how the robbery changed everything.
When you're not there and someone's looking after your money, it's not your money, it's their money. I lost a lot of money as it happens. I know other people, a lot of other people trusted their friends. And these are friends, and they for money. It's as easy as that.
The audacious robbery made the authorities look foolish.
I heard one cousin say to the other one on the radio, he said, "You're not going to believe this." He said, "They just nicked a train."
The response to this humiliation was fierce. At the first trial of 12 of the robbers in April 1964, the judge declared that they were guilty of a sordid, violent crime. He handed out what were then the longest ever sentences for robbery, totaling 307 years. Some of the leaders were jailed for 30 years. Renee Wisby, the wife of one robber, was at her home with the girlfriend of another robber when news came through.
"It's on the wireless," she said. "They're dishing out the bird." She said, "They've got 30. So I thought she meant 30 for the whole lot of them. I went, "Oh, I've still got the bit over in me hand." So I said, "Oh," enough to say, "That's not bad, you know." I said, "Cut that between." She went, H, you silly fool." I went, "Ow." I went, "Oh." Then I collapsed. I woke up in bed. Woke up, I collapsed with shock. I said, 30 years. When I woke up, everyone was round the bed. I was just laying in bed holding my head.
Ronnie Biggs, who has become the most famous of the 18-strong gang, had £150,000 in used notes hidden away, equivalent today to £1.8 million. After his conviction, he had no desire to stay in one of Her Majesty's cells for 30 years. On the 7th of July 1965, he escaped with fellow prisoner Eric Flower.
He had top security and an officer outside his door all night, but no one ever dreamed he'd go in the daytime.
While police were scouring the country, Biggs was hidden in a safe house by Freddie Foreman, a notorious South London criminal. Foreman, an associate of the Krays, then smuggled Ronnie Biggs and Eric Flower out of the country. This is the first time Foreman has talked openly of his role.
We took him down and put him on a boat down at London Bridge. The captain, the number one, they knew who he was on board, but the rest of the crew never knew. But, you know, they was dressed like seamen in civilian clothes and warm clothes, and they were just, you just put down, the two of them were put down the hold, and it was a rough journey they had. And they was picked up in Antwerp and taken to a plastic surgeon, and I think they finished up in Paris.
Since Foreman arranged this daring, costly escape, he and Ronnie Biggs have become good friends.
You come to 10, 20 grand, I think, altogether.
Did you take a lot of money?
No. I took no money at all off of anybody.
Biggs was the second great train robber that Foreman spirited to safety on a boat from London Bridge. The first was Buster Edwards.
But weren't you just flouting the law by aiding his escape from this country?
Yeah, so what? Yeah.
Since his escape, Ronnie Biggs's escapades have been the stuff of tabloid dreams. Publicity made him the ultimate celebrity villain. But the waves of publicity have grossly magnified his role in the Great Train Robbery.
Ronnie Biggs played a very, very minor part. He never touched a mailbag the whole time he was there.
These four men know everything there is to know about the Great Train Robbery. Together, they received jail sentences totaling 103 years. If anyone was a leader, it was Bruce Reynolds.
I saw myself as an extension of a commando leader, and basically it was like, that's where the vehicles go, by Briddigo Bridge. I pointed out to them where the train would be stopping, who was going to be manning the dwarf signal, who was going to be manning the red signal.
If Bruce was the natural commander, Goody led by example when the action began.
When the train stopped, I was the first one onto the footplate. Jack Mills, his driver, was trying to kick down the guy who was trying to get up the other side. I got hold of Jack Mills and gave him to the guy who was behind me.
Jimmy White was the quartermaster, responsible for all the equipment.
I got bought a Land Rover, and they knocked the Land Rover off in the West End, brought it round to my base, and I ordered the plates. They took both vehicles, checked them out, serviced them, did a good job and made sure they didn't let us down.
It was Tommy Wisby's job to induce terror.
My role was one of these so-called heavies, we had to have, because there was 70-odd people on the train, and also there was 7 or 6 people in the highly valuable compartment, so we had to deal with them as well. Therefore, we had to take some people in just in case we did have any confrontation with them sort of people,
By the time of the robbery, these men were all known by the police as major criminals. Crime was their chosen way of life.
I was the only black sheep of our family. They was all hard-working people, yeah. Sometimes you think, was it the war or was it an easy way out of, to get money?
Wisby's physical presence made him a valued member of gangs that required a hard man.
They're coming through the back now. Come on! Lay down the keys!
What was it you wanted?
Most probably a better life. To what my father had. He was a hard worker, worked all his life, and I couldn't see him getting any benefits. What the hours he put into what he was doing.
Why did I get into crime? War years, boredom. Maybe I had no money. I was a child. Little pocket money, no sweets, and that's why I became a criminal.
What about your mother and father?
Honest people, honest people. Telephone engineer. Completely honest.
As a paratrooper, Jimmy White fought the Nazis behind enemy lines on many dangerous missions. But late in the war, he was discharged with a burst ulcer.
I couldn't get no work anywhere. They gave me a pension of 12 shillings a week and told me to drink as much milk as I could. But in 9 months, they called me up again. They said, knocking you down to 9 shillings a week. I thought, that's it. From that moment, I was thieving, and I never stopped.
While Jimmy White was becoming an expert thief, Bruce Reynolds was just starting his criminal education.
I think I got into crime really as an extended form of adventure. I wanted to be one of the big boys, so it really started off with what used to be known then as the country house game. Throughout history, I think, or throughout modern history, jewel thieves have always had a certain romantic nature. It's almost a little bit of the Raffles, and it afforded me a tremendous way of life.
A way of life no young working-class man could achieve in class-bound Britain. Bruce Reynolds' days of mingling with celebrities amongst the Belgravia set were interrupted when he was sent to jail for nearly 4 years. By the time he came out, the criminal world had changed.
whereas before it had been mainly a question of finessing to get money rather than a confrontational. Now, with security arrangements, technological advances that had been made, it was pretty obvious that, you know, you had to work within groups and target specific targets, mainly commercial targets like businesses.
Confrontation could mean violence.
Confrontation usually meant some sort of violence.
One act of violence has never been forgiven.
Well, I wanted to save my train if possible. I thought there was only 2 bandits. Now, of course, they're no different.
The great train robbers still maintain the coshing of train driver Jack Mills was the result of panic by a member of the gang, whom they still refuse to name.
I feel sorry for this Mr. Mills, I really do. Sorry for the injury he got, and...
I've always I've had regrets, and I've expressed them publicly, and I've written about it, mainly because it was a mistake that should never have happened.
But by the late 50s, large cash shipments had much stronger security. Without at least threatening violence, there was no chance of getting the prize.
If you had to hit someone, you would hit someone.
Oh, yeah, if you had to, but...
Did you think about this and say, well, I might hurt someone? Was there any morality here?
No morality at all. The only instinctive thing was to get money.
Well, we used to have pickaxe handles, you know, cut down to your size and that, you know.
So this is really robbery with violence?
Yeah.
Did the violence part of it worry you?
We didn't have to use too much. You know, when I say that, it wasn't too much violence because, as I said, the object was to put the fear up and smash it into the car, and you know, and then the element of surprise, you know, that basically was the fear, you know.
But what's too much violence? What's the dividing line between too much violence?
Well, when you have to use your koshes on them, you know.
And did you have to use your koshes on them?
Not very often. We did a few times, you know.
Do these wager snatches?
Yeah.
Hurt anyone?
Not bad. Not bad, you know. Well, when I say bad, I wasn't put in the hospital, you know, as such, you know.
You mean they didn't stay in hospital?
No.
Few cuts, few
cuts.
Stitches?
Stitches.
Blood?
Yeah.
Did you question whether this was sort of thing you should be doing?
No, I didn't as it happens, Chris, no. I just thought it was a way of life, you know, for getting what I wanted out of life.
I'd known Gordon Goody for some time. He had a reputation as being quite a violent man if he had to be, but Gordon had that look of menace that really negated any need for violence because he looked like he could be very, very violent.
In November 1962, Gordon Goody and Bruce Reynolds led their gang on a wager snatch at London Airport that depended on speed, daring, and the readiness to use violence. The gang dressed as city gents. Several had iron bars in rolled umbrellas. Goody kept watch at the top of the building as the security van arrived. 2 guards and 2 pay officials brought in the strongbox containing £62,000 in cash.
People came rushing up the lift and people came rushing down the stairs, and I got hit across the side of the head and stunned and went down to the ground.
Well, no, there was a security guy there, and I gave him a clump, that's all, you know.
You gave him a clump?
Yeah, I think he had a couple of stitches, that's all.
Harris's boss was also struck down.
I remember seeing with his face streaming down with blood, he's got a cut across his forehead where he'd been hit right in front.
So was your attitude that you had to give them as sharp a slap as was needed to get the money? Whatever it took, you needed the money?
Of course, and the thing is, it's fright. You've got to frighten them, you know? And it's difficult to explain to you. If you're threatened and someone says drop it, you'll drop it, will you not?
Now, did they give you a chance just to hand over the money?
None whatsoever. None whatsoever. We didn't get a chance. We didn't stand a chance.
They just hit you?
Yeah.
The police knew that few London gangs could pull off such an audacious, well-planned raid. Half the gang were rounded up the next day. Neither Bruce Reynolds nor Gordon Goody were convicted. They got away by bribing police officers, nobbling the jury, and threatening witnesses.
How did I influence that jury? Well, some of the evidence against me involved clothing, a hat to be precise, and someone who picked me out on an identification parade said that he could recognize me with this hat, and the police had possession of this hat, and I paid a policeman money to change the hat, and the hat, whereas it fitted me before, it didn't fit me afterwards. You understand? When
you gave him a new hat, bigger hat.
Exactly. And when it was in the court and I was asked to try the hat on, the hat fell down like this, you know, and there's a couple of other things, and there was a juryman who was
visited.
Yes, right, yeah.
I came back from the south of France after 6 months, and my name had been on a list of people that they wanted to question, but we had certain contacts within the police force, and suitable palms were greased, and my name was expunged from the wanted list, and I came home.
Other corrupt members within the criminal justice system made the great train robbery possible. During the airport trial, Gordon Goody was represented by a firm of solicitors that were as crooked as the men they advised. Brian Field, the managing clerk, made Goody a remarkable offer.
And he said, Gordon, he said, if you get out of this one, do you fancy going to work again? So I said, of course, you know, and he introduced me to someone, and that person was the man who gave me the information for the train.
And who was that person who gave the information?
No, I can't give you that, I can't. But he exists, believe you me, he exists. You know.
You know his name?
I know his name.
Goody discovered who his secret informant was at a meeting in Kensington Gardens. While the informant went for coffees, Goody opened up his glass case and saw his name and address.
Well, I think that it was family. I think it was family on the train. I can't prove it. He never said it was family or anything like that, but he had top information.
I was amazed at the information that Gordon gave to me about this travelling post office which ran from Glasgow to London, and the fact that it had come from Brian Fields, a solicitor's clerk who'd acted for them. It seemed to give it some credibility, and when the figure of 1 million to 6 million was mentioned to me, my first thoughts were, this is it, this really is El Dorado, this is the big one, this is the one that's going to, for a start, put your name up in lights as one of the best thieves that's ever been.
Bruce Reynolds and Gordon Goody knew they had to find a man with the expertise to stop an express train at precisely the right place, if they were to pull off their greatest robbery. Tommy Wisby was in a gang known as the South Coast Raiders. Between 1962 and 1963, Wisby and his associates raided 6 trains on the South Coast line.
Did you begin to think robbing trains was easy?
Yes, I did as it happens, yeah. Yeah. Yes, it was, you know, it was no... it was easy, it was, yeah.
The man who discovered how to stop trains was the leader of the South Coast Raiders, Roger Caudry.
Well, I placed
glove over the green bulb and connected batteries to the red bulb, and this has also been done at the orange signal further up the line by somebody else.
Reynolds needed Caudry's help, but the South Coast Raiders would not be split up. They insisted that 4 of their gang, including Caudry, were brought in on the Great Train robbery.
Did they welcome you?
Well, I don't think at first they liked the idea.
A larger team meant a smaller share of the prize, but Reynolds knew there might be 80 Royal Mail staff on the train they planned to ambush. A few of the wives and girlfriends suspected something exceptional was being plotted. But Renee Wisby was the loyal, unquestioning wife whenever the gang came to her home.
I would be locked out the kitchen, making the tea and that, and tap on the door when I carried it in. I felt a bit nervous, but I thought, well, he's got this far, there's no way in the world he's going to take any notice of me saying, don't do it, don't do it. He's going to do it. So, but I didn't really know that, you know, that he was going to rob a train.
For months, the gang prepared for the day that would change their lives. Vehicles were bought or stolen, supplies purchased. Bridego Bridge, close to a quiet road in Buckinghamshire, was chosen as the ideal place to unload the mailbags. And Leatherslade Farm, about 30 miles away, was bought as their base. The gang planned to stop the train about half a mile from Bridego Bridge by changing the main signal from green to red. But from there, they would have to drive the train half a mile further to Bridego Bridge. Could they force the driver to do it? Bruce Reynolds was friendly with a carpenter and minor thief called Ronnie Biggs. Biggs mentioned he was doing odd jobs for a retired train driver. This was how Biggs forced his way onto the team.
His sole job was he was friends with his sole train driver, who he said could drive the train.
The Royal Mail train the gang had targeted left Glasgow for Euston every night at 7 p.m. 12 coaches carried 77 post office workers sorting mail through the night. The robbers' target was the high-value package coach, which they knew was the second one back from the locomotive. Inside the coach was the stuff of criminal fantasy. 128 mailbags full of used banknotes on their way to banks in London. At 12:30 a.m. on August the 8th, 1963, the gang set off for Bridego Bridge. They looked like an army unit. The robbers hoped the locals would assume they were troops on a night exercise. At 1:30, they arrived at Bridego Bridge and prepared their ambush. Telephone wires were cut. Now everything depended on Roger Caudry's ability to change the signals. He covered the green light on the first signal and switched on an amber light. Then further down the line, he turned the main signal from green to red. The trap was set.
Okay.
At 3:02 in the morning, the train slowed at the amber signal, then stopped at the red signal. The driver's mate climbed out of the cab to phone the signal box from the trackside.
Just got hold of him bodily, you know, just got behind him and got hold of him. Just going around the neck and whatever, got hold of him and said, come on, mate, blah, blah, blah.
You didn't meet any resistance?
No.
What would you have done if you had?
Well, I suppose, I suppose he'd have got a clump or something like that, but he just froze the kid, you know.
Jack Mills, the driver, tried to fight off the robbers invading his cab.
pulled him back like that, yeah, because the other guy on the other step trying to get up, Mills was kicking him down. I said, come on now, you got to hold him like that, and just pushed him, handed him to the guy who was behind me.
There was about 3 or 4 people getting on one side and 3 or 4 people getting on the other side. So when we got in the cab, it was really full up.
In the melee, one of the gang hit Mills on the head with a kosh.
No, I didn't see it, but Tommy and Charlie bandaged his head. And they know, they see the injuries on his head.
He wasn't bad. He was talking to us. He said, I think you're a thorough gentleman, he said, you know, bandaged his eye and all that, you know. Unfortunately, he got hit, you know.
But there was blood streaming down, which you were clearing up?
From his face, yeah.
During these moments of drama in the cab, Charlie Wilson and Roy James uncoupled the diesel engine and the high-value package coach from the rest of the train. The idea was to leave the 72 postal workers still busily sorting the post in the rear 10 coaches.
Charlie and Roy did the uncoupling. You can't get 3 men there, just 2 men. One was going like that, uncouple it. It screws on like that, and then you unlock it. But my job was to go along in the railman's gear, because all the 65 sorters in there looking out what's on, and they'd go like that, and they'd just wave back at me.
Mills and his assistant were bundled into a passageway, handcuffed and forced to lie down. Ronnie Biggs's train driver was brought in to drive the train.
That was what Biggs was there for, with another driver. And the other driver, he couldn't do it. He was out of his depth, really, you know.
There's an old man, and it turned out it was a big mistake. He couldn't clue.
Gordon Goody shouted for Mills to be dragged back into the cab.
You actually said to Mills, move this train or you'll get more stick.
It's possible I did say that, but I can't recall. I may have said that. So that put me on the. I likely did say that.
Eventually, Mills got the train going, slowly pulling the high-value goods carriage.
We were actually on the embankment when the loco come into view with most of the team hanging out of windows with various instructions like stop here, don't stop here.
As Mills was saying, well, make up your mind where you want it to stop, because he was shunting and going and slowing and going, and then there was I think Bruce was along the line somewhere, and he had a flag stuck in the ground where he wanted it. So.
The train was now at Bridego Bridge. The robbers made for the carriage containing the mail bags stuffed with banknotes.
Well, yeah, I suppose at the time I did smash the windows. That was the idea to get in, you know.
And with a crowbar?
With the crowbar, whatever sticks, whatever, yeah.
One report has it you were going berserk with a crowbar, smashing windows.
Me? Yeah.
Terrifying sight.
Yeah.
What did the workers in that van, how did they react?
They didn't. And the next thing we knew, they was on the floor. They didn't put up no resistance whatsoever.
It's what you call the frightening states. Him going around smashing the windows, Tom, that made them think, and it frightened them, and they all huddled down in the corner.
What I saw was the first bag of, well, lots of bags in a cage. And I pulled one out.
And I held the bag while Gordon ripped it open with a sheep knife.
I could see it was cash, and that was it. That was the prize.
That was the money. That was it.
Very exciting. Very exciting, yeah.
Bruce Reynolds had set a deadline of just 30 minutes to load up.
It was very exhaustive work on the chain. They weighed from 20 pounds maybe to 75 pounds, so it was exhausting. Plus everyone's adrenaline is pumping away like mad.
Everyone I picked up was heavy, and I thought, yeah, that's good. It's the real thing, you know. I looked round to someone, I forget it was, and went, this is it, like, you know.
At the other end of the chain, Jimmy White and Bob Welsh were loading the lorries.
So they were slinging them down more faster and faster, and I was firing them up, and Bob was stacking them up at the back of the vehicle. And it was but it's so fast, but we was exhausted, just sweat was pouring on, had all this clothing on, and it was just, you know, wringing wet with sweat.
The 30 minutes were up. Reynolds ordered the men into the vehicles. They left behind 6 bags containing £130,000.
When we saw the packages come tumbling out, it was all sealed up. They started being stacked, and as I'd been at the farm longer than most of the others, I was totally exhausted, and I said, I'm going to bed.
They was in parcels of, say, 30 grand came from a bank, blah, blah, Isle of Man, you know, so you knew there was 30 grand in it, so we started stacking them up, and then someone was taking the figures down so that we knew exactly what figures was in the bundles.
There's bundles of money here, stacked up here, and then there's counted up, there's $1 million, and then...
And as I walked in the back door, there was money, and Charlie was just going like that, falling back in it.
Time we counted up, it came to £2.5 million. It came to about £149,000 each individual.
For 48 hours, Tommy Wisby and the rest of the gang laid low at Leatherslade Farm. None suspected their crime would create headlines around the world. They were now outlaws, to be hunted down at all costs. Mrs. Wisby was at the seaside with her 2 daughters and her friend Jean.
There was a red tat on the door. I said, oh, it's Tom. Then we let him in. Tom had a lovely check jacket on and a beautiful dark green shirt. He called me in the bedroom and he said, hey, I'm not going to stay long. He said, do you want some money? I said, of course I do, I'm skin potless. So he gave me a 20-player cigarette packet. And when I opened it, I said, how much is there? He said, well, yeah, I'll take it. He said, there's about a monkey there. So I said, oh, that's it, thank you.
A monkey?
Monkey, which is £500. So I was on to my last 20 quid, I think. Anyway, he kissed me goodbye and I just stuck it in the bedroom, the money, and come out. And my friend, like, she never said a word. I said, oh, I said, he's just give me some money, Jean. I said, so we'll be able to have a little spend up tomorrow with the kids.
And spend they did, just as the police concentrated their search on isolated buildings within a 30-mile radius of the crime.
That was gone. That was gone in a couple of weeks.
Gone in a couple of weeks?
Yeah.
When Jimmy White went home, he did not tell his wife Cherie about the robbery or give her any money. But by sheer coincidence, Cherie went to a shop where the wives of 2 other train robbers had bought expensive clothes just the day before. By now, the whole nation was on the alert. All big spenders were suspects.
I went into a shop, bought a couple of jumpers with my own money, came out, and Jimmy was standing there. He had the dog, and the baby was in the car, and all these police and CID were all up the road, and they said, we want to speak to you. And I said, what about? They said, well, you've been spending a lot of money. So I said, no, I haven't. I remember it very clear. I said, I spent £56, 2 cashmere jumpers. So anyway, they said they were going to take me down the station and this and that and this and that. And I bluffed my way out of it. I didn't bluff my way out of it because I thought I was in the right, you know. After they gone, I said to Jimmy, what a bloody cheek, you know. You spend £56 and they want to know where you've got it and this and that. And think you're one of the train robber's wife. And he turned round to me and he said, I've got 7 bags of money in the car. I've left some money in there, and you silly sod, you are a train robber's wife.
Hours later, Jimmy White would have another close escape. The robbers left the clearing up at the farm to Brian Field, the solicitor's clerk who had the original idea for the robbery. Field had been given £28,000 on top of his £150,000 share to pay someone to clear away the evidence. But it never happened. In a panic, some of the gang drove back to do the job themselves.
And on the way there, it come over the wall, they had it on in the car, said that if they found the farm. Of course, we turned around and couldn't get back quick enough. It was about 20 miles from it, too. We had a lucky turn there.
You were going back to the farm?
Yeah, to
clear it up?
Burn it down.
Because Brian Field had failed?
He hadn't done it, yeah.
That must have been a terrible shock.
He took his money and he didn't do it.
Were you angry?
Well, you'd have seen some violence if they'd got hold of him.
Police found the hideout on August the 13th, 5 days after the robbery.
Several sets of fingerprints have been discovered, and it's quite a good bet that some of those fingerprints will match records at the yard. In addition, of course, there were vast stocks of tinned food and other stores, and it's possible the police may have a lead here.
The robbery had the professionalism of a military operation. The aftermath resembled an amateur farce. The police quickly traced the purchase of the farm to Field's own legal practice.
But looking back now, stupid thing.
You'd think a solicitor and his clerk would know better.
So, yeah.
8 days after the robbery, these two people went for a walk in Dorking Woods and discovered bags containing £101,000. Brian Field's parents had dumped the bags in the woods after finding the money in their home. Shortly afterwards, the police found a caravan Jimmy White had bought. They pulled away the panelling and discovered £30,000. The biggest break for the police came with the discovery of fingerprints at Leatherslade Farm. Now they had the names of 8 of the robbers. Arrests quickly followed. 12 of the gang and their helpers were in the dock when the first trial began in January 1964, just 5 months after the raid. The robbers have always insisted that the fingerprint evidence was fabricated, but this has never been proved. But real doubts remain about the conviction of William Bole. Bole was arrested with his friend Roger Caudry, the signals expert. The police said yellow paint found on a minute piece of metal in Bowles' pocket matched paint found on the ground at Leatherslade Farm.
Bill Bole wasn't the train robber, and he wasn't at the farm. And he died in prison, the poor guy.
You're convinced he was fitted up?
I'm 100%. I'm 100,000% sure he was fitted up.
The police also claimed that a pair of Goody's shoes had traces of the same yellow paint.
But those shoes had never been within 40 miles of the farm.
I burnt their shoes, so how could any of them be found?
I was a train robber, there's no doubt about it, you know. I was fitted up. And I can understand it to a certain degree, you know.
Like most of the robbers, Goody spent about £35,000, nearly a quarter of his share, on the best lawyers. But to no avail. Goody was sent to prison for 30 years. The robbers returned to the scene of their crime, a crime that seemed to put a curse on them. They served between 9 and 12 years in jail. Families split up. Children became estranged. Buster Edwards later committed suicide. Charlie Wilson was murdered. Ronnie Biggs may die in prison. Bruce Reynolds spent 5 years on the run with his family, living the jet-set lifestyle. But his view of money changed.
It was a pinnacle, really, of what I see as my criminal career. It's perhaps a life that everyone thinks they want to lead, that, you know, you're living in a penthouse with the cars, with all the trappings that go with it. But it pulls after a while because you're still the same person. It reveals that, you know, money isn't the answer to everything.
Renee Wisby went on a spending spree to forget the hardships her husband Tommy faced in prison, especially during the first 2 years when he was in solitary confinement.
Well, if I wanted any money, all I had to do was ring a certain number up, and they used to bring me there.
Who do you mean they?
Well, a couple of his friends. They used to say, you better have, you know, blah, 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 in case we can't get round to see you for a few weeks. And if I had a lot, I'd go over and have a right, you know, spend up. Bought the girls some nice things. And when I used to go shopping...
Did you ever have any doubts about spending this stolen money?
No. I didn't have a conscience at all.
Renee Wisby sent her daughters to a private school, invested in betting shops and a house.
The house, it was only about $6.5 grand. So that was quite cheap. And we sold it for $185,000 in '76.
That's not bad.
No. But as I say, I spent a lot of money on the house because I had all the fitted bedroom furniture put in the girls' room and new bedroom furniture in my bedroom, nice bathroom suite, chocolate brown tiles, because brown wasn't out then. I had chocolate brown tiles and purple carpet upstairs in the hallway. And the flock wallpaper was out then, and I had the beautiful crystal wall lights. It's like Buckingham Palace. I started to drive. I bought a new car, a new Vauxhall Viva. I couldn't pass my test. I passed on my 3rd attempt, but I went and bought a new car. I bought 5, actually, over a period of time.
All new?
Brand new.
What did Tommy think about this? Because you were spending a lot of his money.
He never said nothing. Never said a word. As long as he knew that I was going to wait for him. I told him from the off I would always be there for him. No, he wasn't worried about the money. Because some of the money was invested in a betting shop, a couple of betting shops. And I suppose he thought that they were still going to be there when he came home. After we crossed that bridge when we come to it. You know, he never used to worry about the money.
Did it bring you happiness, having all that money?
It did for a little while, but it didn't last. And like Vivian Nichols. I was a spend, and suddenly you look round, it's gone.
Like so many of the other robbers and their wives, Renee and Tommy suffered a personal tragedy no amount of money could heal. Their daughter Lorraine died in a car crash. Tommy, still in jail, was not allowed to go to the funeral.
It was more difficult for my wife to cope with it, like being on the outside, and my daughter, you know. Yeah, it was a difficult time in our lives, you know. Because one minute you're doing it for them, basically, and then next thing you think you're going to be out when you come out, and then it's not to be. Something happens, you know.
Jimmy White was in crime more for excitement than a better life. After the robbery, he went on the run for 2 years with his wife and baby son. But eventually, Jimmy began to question the selfishness of his lifestyle.
I spent eight months in a room and never went outside the door. So I was the one that suffered through all that, you know, through those things. It's terrible. Your baby's crying and you've got all that, and you're supposed to be living a wonderful life.
While Cherie hid indoors, Jimmy went unnoticed in the crowds.
He could mix with anybody, and because he's ordinary, you don't, I don't know how to put it, what words to put it in. You're a villain, you're a rogue.
No,
yes, he's an absolute rogue. He just doesn't care, do you? You don't care.
Well, I do. It's a funny sort of thing, really. I did get pleasure out of it, but I don't think, and I learnt a lesson that to get the living from crime or committing crimes when you've got a wife and children, I mean, that's you have to rethink your life all over again.
Jimmy could not even take comfort from knowing he had provided for his family. The friends who looked after his money betrayed him.
How many of your friends ripped you off? How many of your friends took your money?
4 so-called friends.
How much did you lose in all to friends?
30, 40, 50, 60,
think about it.
about £80,000 altogether. And plus what I gave away, 5 grand here, a couple of grand there. People that I knew really up against it, you know.
£80,000, I mean, today's equivalent of over £1 million.
Yeah, that's it.
Jimmy knew their days on the run had to end when his young son fell ill.
You suddenly sit there and you're saying, my God, you know, he's going blue, what is it? And you can't do what the poorest person in the land can do, is walk round to the doctor or call a doctor. If you call a doctor, that's what they're waiting for when you're on the run.
Jimmy White asked his solicitor to start negotiating with the police, but they had already tracked him down, and the next day captured him.
He always put us before himself. That's why I've stayed with you all this time, out of loyalty.
And that loyalty remained firm throughout the 9 years Jimmy was in prison.
I never went out one evening, not one single evening at all.
When you say you didn't go out?
I didn't go anywhere.
What, year after year?
Year after year after year. Yeah. Never went anywhere at all.
How does it make you feel, Jimmy, that your wife is staying so loyal for 9 years?
Well, he was on his own, really, wasn't he?
Well, a very lucky person.
Oh, thank you very much. We finally got one compliment.
Jimmy has turned his back on crime. He and Cherie have little money, but they have each other. He wouldn't risk that, even for another great train robbery.
If you had to spend 1 year for all that money, it's not worth it. 1 year being in a prison. Can you imagine it? That's terrible, isn't it? Crime doesn't pay. It doesn't pay. If you hear about the glamorous side of it, but there's no glamorous side. There isn't a glamorous side, is there, Jimmy?
No.
I mean, look, you know, so many people, and it definitely doesn't pay. Not if it takes your freedom, and you can't be with your family, and you can't do what you want, and you're a number. It doesn't pay.
There's live coverage from round 4 in the GP2 series tomorrow at 2:45. And there's more sporting coverage heading your way next tonight as we head to Vienna for Euro 2008 highlights.